The feasting fires of Winterfell burned low and red, like coals left too long in the hearth after a bloody day. The flayed man banners of House Bolton had already been torn down and dragged outside, trampled into the slush until pink and black were just streaks in the mud. In their place, the gray dire wolf of House Stark hung once more above the high table, its tattered cloth stirring whenever a cold draft slipped through the cracks in the stone. Men drank beneath it and shouted themselves hoarse, as if enough noise might drown the memory of bodies piled in the snow. The smell of roast mutton and spilled ale mingled with smoke, wet wool and a faint iron tang that clung to Jon Snow no matter how he scrubbed. He had bathed. Some stains did not wash away. He stood at the center of the great hall and felt oddly apart from it, as though he were watching through someone else's eyes. Laughter washed over him like distant surf. Tankards were raised in his direction, nods and claps thrown like coins at a victor. His mind kept slipping away to the courtyard, to a bastard in mail on his knees with hungry dogs circling. "You should sit," Sansa Stark murmured at his side. She wore her hair in heavy northern braids threaded with small silver moons, no longer the glossy curls she had once arranged for court in King's Landing. Her eyes, though, were the same, wary, weighing every face. "People are watching." "They've been watching all night," Jon said, his voice still rough from bellowed commands and curses on the battlefield. He had roared at Ramsay as arrow after arrow flew toward Rickon's fleeing shape. His throat burned with words he had spoken and the ones that had died in his chest. "Let them." Across the hall, Peter Baelish bent his head toward Lord Jon Royce. Jon caught a flash of Littlefinger's thin smile, the unmoving stone of Royce's face. Men from the Vale sat dammed in with northern lords along every bench, blue cloaks pressed against gray and brown. Quarrels were already smoldering between them, who had fled, who had stood, whose ravens had gone unanswered. But for the moment, the ale had the better of pride. Lyanna Mormont stood atop a bench near the far hearth, her small boots planted beside an untouched trencher. Her bare fur swallowed her, but her voice cut clean through the din. "And yet House Mormont remembers," she was saying, jabbing a finger at a man twice her size. "We remember the true king in the north." Laughter and a rough cheer rolled up around her. Jon shifted under it, heat prickling his neck. King. Half his life he had worn black, sworn before the Heart Tree and his brothers that he would hold no lands and father no sons, that he would never be a king. That life lay broken in the snow at the foot of the wall along with his blood. Davos Seaworth slipped through the crush to reach him, moving with a smuggler's ease. "They're drunk enough to love you and sober enough to remember it in the morning," Davos said quietly, following Jon's gaze. "Could be worse, M-Lord." "Don't call me that," Jon muttered without real heat. "What would you rather?" Davos asked. "Bastard? Crow? The man who took back Winterfell from a flayed skin." Sansa's fingers brushed Jon's forearm, steadying. "They're grateful," she said. "Let them be." Jon glanced toward the benches. Wyman Manderly's round face shone with wine and sweat above a bursting red and green doublet. Robert Glover sat stiff as a spear, grim even in victory. Tormund Giantsbane slumped on a bench, beard full of grease and crumbs as he tore at a haunch of meat. When he saw Jon looking, the wildling raised the bone in salute, grinning. Grateful, Jon thought, and remembered suffocating in a crush of bodies, pressed chest to back in a living tomb of mail and leather. Remembered the sky gone out behind a wall of shields, the thunder of hooves he had braced himself to die beneath. He had expected never to see another feast hall. "I should be with the men," he said, "those that survived." "They are here," Sansa answered. "Every man in this hall fought. Every woman tended the wounded or stripped arrows from the walls. They're not asking you to dance, Jon. They're asking you to accept their thanks." Her gaze flicked to the high table, to the empty chair beside her where a Stark should sit. And to remember that Winterfell needs a Stark. Eddard Stark's ghost seemed to occupy that chair already. Jon heard his low, steady voice in his head. The man who passes the sentence should swing the sword. Jon had been swinging one ever since he had left for the wall. He drew in a slow breath. "I remember," he said. "It's everything else I don't know how to be." "We'll learn," Sansa said. There was no certainty in it, only tired resolve. Down the hall, Lyanna Mormont twisted to face him, eyes bright as coals. "There!" she cried, and her small voice cut through the noise like a blade. "There stands the man who avenged the Red Wedding and took back Winterfell. Jon Snow, Jon Stark." The hall began to quiet, heads turning. Jon could feel the weight of their attention gather on his shoulders like fresh mail. Davos nudged him forward. Sansa's hand slipped away. For half a heartbeat, he imagined turning his back on all of it and walking out into the snow. Instead, he went toward the center of the hall. The nearer Jon came to the center of the hall, the quieter it grew. Benches scraped as men shifted to give him space, boots thudding on old flagstones. The crackle of the hearthfire grew in the absence of shouting, and somewhere high up in the rafters a raven croaked once before settling again. Lyanna Mormont hopped down from her bench as he approached. She planted herself before him, chin lifted, her dark eyes unwavering. "House Mormont remembers," she said, voice clear. "The North remembers. Will you?" Jon looked down at her, at the girl wearing a dead woman's name like armor. Lyanna Stark had died in a tower far to the south for love and honor both. This Lyanna would live or die for the same, here in the cold that had made her. "I remember," he said. "Then speak to us," boomed Wyman Manderly, pushing to his feet with a visible effort. "You're our host in your father's hall, my lord. Tell us what comes next." My father's hall, Jon thought, and that twist of old hurt pulled tight inside him. Eddard Stark, who had sat at the high table and heard petitions and ruffled Jon's hair with awkward affection when no one was looking, was dead in a city of lions. In his place had come Roose Bolton and his bastard, flayed men on the walls and flayed men on the crosses. Now they looked to Jon, Ned's bastard son, as if that were simple. "I don't know what comes next," Jon said at last. Truth settled over the gathered lords like new snow. Some bristled. Others looked oddly relieved. "I know only this: Winterfell is ours again. Ramsay Bolton is dead. There is no flayed man flying over your heads tonight. That is a beginning." Murmurs stirred. Robert Glover's stern face inclined a fraction. Harrion Karstark's jaw worked, but he held his tongue. "We bled for that beginning," Glover said. "My house, Manderly, Mormont, every house that answered your call. The wall is not so far north of here, Lord Snow. You fought there. You know what waits beyond it." A thin chill licked up Jon's spine. He saw again a cliff of ice and a cold blue gaze, dead things stirring to a silent command. "I know," he said. "Then what do we do?" Someone called. "Cersei Lannister sits on a stolen throne in King's Landing. The Freys still squat in the Twins. The Ironborn raid our coasts. And the dead." The man's voice faltered, and he crossed himself helplessly. Sansa stepped down from the high table before Jon could answer. She didn't hurry. The hall watched her come, rustles of recognition passing from bench to bench. The girl who had once cooed about golden princes and songs had been burned away. What remained was sharper, tempered in fire and cold. "We do not forget the South," she said, her voice level. "But we cannot pretend it will save us. We trusted Lannisters once. My father paid with his life, Robb with his crown and his heart. Every time the North has knelt to a Southern king, it has ended in slaughter." Her eyes flickered briefly toward Peter Baelish's pale, watchful face, then moved on. "Jon did not win this battle, so we could hand our fate to another lion or stag." "Then who, Lady Sansa?" a lesser lord called. "If not a lion, if not a stag, who?" Silence stretched. The fire popped, sending a spray of sparks up the chimney. Lyanna Mormont filled it. "We have a king," she declared. "A king who bled for us and did not run. A king who fought at the wall and in the snow, who stood alone when all seemed lost." She turned, addressing the benches. "I don't care that he's a bastard. Ned Stark's blood is in him. That's enough for me." She bent her knee, small hand pressed to the flagstones. I, Lyanna Mormont of House Mormont, pledge my sword, my house and my life to Jon Snow, the king in the north." The words struck Jon like hammer blows. For a heartbeat, he could only stare at the top of her dark head. Then Wyman Manderly lumbered down, his knees cracking audibly as he went to one knee as well. "The little bear speaks true," he said. "I knew Eddard Stark. I knew Robb Stark. This man fought like them both, and he fought for us. To hell with bastardy and southern papers. He is our king, whether he asks it or no." He bowed his broad head. "The king in the north! The king in the north!" Glover echoed, kneeling in turn. "The king in the north!" cried Harrion Karstark, and more men followed, until mail rang and cloaks pooled and the hall was full of kneeling men. Jon stood amid them, throat tight. On the dais, Sansa watched him with something unreadable in her eyes, a mixture of pride, pain, and a hint of fear. In the shadows, Baelish's smile had thinned, his fingers steepled in thought. Tormund only laughed and banged his fist on the table, as if this were the greatest jest the gods had ever tried. "King." The word echoed in Jon's skull, wrong and heavy. He remembered knives in the dark at Castle Black, brothers' hands dragging him down into the cold. If this was what he had been brought back for, he wanted no part of it. And yet, as the hall thundered, "The king in the north" around him, he understood that turning away would not undo what had been done. The North had chosen, and in choosing had placed its life in his hands. The chant rolled over him like a storm tide, crashing and breaking and crashing again. Men needed it, he realized, the roar, the rhythm. It was a wall of sound against ghosts, against Boltons and Freys and red weddings, against the memory of their own fear. They shouted until their faces flushed and their voices broke, until the words blurred into one pounding heartbeat. At last Jon lifted his hands for silence. Came in fits and starts, a few more cries thrown up like sparks before they died. Even kneeling, the lords watched him with raw expectation. "I did not fight for a crown," he said. The words came slowly but firmly. "I did not come back to Winterfell to be a king." "You came back to save your home," Lyanna Mormont said fiercely. "That is why we trust you." "Yes," Jon said, "to save my home, to save our home, from Boltons and Freys and lions and krakens, and from something worse, from the dead." Unease rippled through the hall like wind through tall grass. Men shifted in their mail, some scoffing under their breath, others glancing uneasily toward the north-facing walls as if expecting ice to seep through the stone. "You think they're stories," Jon said bluntly. "Old wives' tales told to frighten children into their beds. Let me tell you what I have seen. I have seen the dead walk. I have seen friends of mine rise with blue eyes after the life left them. I have seen an army of them, stretching from one end of the horizon to the other, and a king with eyes like ice raising them with a lift of his hands." His voice roughened. "That is what comes for us. That is why the wall was built. Not to keep wildlings out, to keep them out." The great hall seemed to contract around his words. Somewhere, someone made a sign to the old gods. Tormund folded his arms over his chest and nodded, adding his silent weight to Jon's testimony. "You may doubt me," Jon went on. "You may tell yourselves that the dead are a problem for Blackcloaks on the wall. But I was Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. I died for it. And I tell you this, the wall will not be enough. When the dead come, they will not stop at the gift or the neck. They will come for Winterfell and White Harbor and every hall you hold dear. They will come for your sons and daughters. The North must stand together, or we will fall alone, one by one, bone by bone, in the dark." For a long moment no one spoke. Then Robert Glover rose, slowly, from his kneel. "Then we need a leader," he said. "A leader we trust. The South has given us kings enough, Baratheons and Lannisters and their like, and we have graves enough to show for it. The North must look to its own. You say you did not fight for a crown, Jon Snow. Perhaps not, but you fought for us, and we have chosen you." His dark eyes fixed on Jon. "If you will not be our king, say it now. We will find another. But don't think we'll forget what you've done." Jon's instinct was to retreat behind old words. "I'm a bastard," he said. "Some of you knew me as a boy. You remember where I sat when I was allowed into this hall at all. I have no right." "Rights?" rumbled Wyman Manderly, pushing himself upright. "Our words. Lord is a word, king another. Blood and deeds are what give the words weight. If the gods have seen fit to keep you standing when so many Starks lie in their graves, perhaps we should pay attention." Sansa left the dais and came to stand at Jon's side. She did not kneel. She did not need to. The sight of Eddard Stark's daughter shoulder to shoulder with his supposed bastard son was symbol enough. "My brother is right about the dead," she said. "I have not seen them, but I have seen other monsters in southern gold and northern pink. They all had crowns behind them. They all had fine names and parchment rights. I have had enough of those men. Haven't you?" Someone growled. Others echoed. "Then you should be queen," a wine-loose lord called. "You are Eddard Stark's trueborn, his heir." The words drew nods, glances, hungry and hopeful both. Jon felt Sansa go still beside him, as if the old girl who had once dreamed of crowns stirred uneasily. Sansa's jaw clenched. "I am my father's daughter," she said, "and as such I know what he would say. He would say the North needs the man who will do what must be done, even if it kills him. That is not me anymore." Her eyes met Jon's. "It is Jon." The simple declaration landed with a finality that even Littlefinger's smile could not entirely mask. Jon heard the shape of a choice solidify around him. "If I accept this," he said, fingers tightening on the edge of the nearest bench, "if I let you call me king, understand what it means. I will not march south to play at lions and thrones while the dead mass at our walls. I will not waste northern lives on old grudges when there is a greater enemy. I will ask you for men and food until it hurts you to give them, because it will hurt us more not to. I will make choices you will not like. If I fail you, you can take my head, as you would any traitor. Do you accept that? The king in the north?" Wyman Manderly roared, and the words crashed back in answer, rolling up to the rafters. This time, Jon did not raise his hands to stop them. He let the chant wash over him, cold and hot at once, trying not to think how much like the roar of the sea it sounded, and how small a man was before either. The wind on Winterfell's outer ramparts carried knives in it. Jon stood with his gloved hands braced on the parapet and let the cold work its way under his furs, grateful for any sensation that was simple and honest. Far below, the castle's inner ward was a warren of flickering lights and dark shapes. The fires of the great hall burned bright, spilling gold through open doors as men staggered in and out in varying stages of drunkenness. Beyond the walls lay only snow and night. The world outside the firelight was a vast, indifferent darkness, broken by the occasional pinprick of lanterns in far-off crofts. Somewhere out there, on moors and in frozen riverbeds, their dead from the battle lay stiffening under fresh drifts. Winter didn't care who had won. "Storms passed," Davos Seaworth said, boots crunching softly as he joined Jon on the wall. "For tonight, anyway. Another will come," Jon said, watching his breath plume white and vanish. "They always do." Davos rested his forearms on the stone beside him. His hands were roughened almost to leather, long fingers nicked and scarred by a lifetime of rope and oars and blades. "You're thinking of the dead," he said. "I'm always thinking of the dead," Jon answered. "The ones beyond the wall, the ones in the ground." He hesitated. "The ones I left behind at Castle Black." "Aye," Davos's voice gentled. "And of kings I'd wager. There are a few of those rattling around your thoughts now." "I was happier as a steward's son," Jon said. "No crowns, no councils, just lessons I thought I'd never need." He huffed a thin, humorless breath. "The gods must be laughing themselves hoarse." "If they are, I don't hear them," Davos said. "All I hear is a man who doesn't want power he's been given, which is the only sort of man I trust with it." Jon's mouth twitched despite himself. "You sound like Maester Aemon," he said softly. "He told me once that a man who would be king should know what it is to be afraid." He was a wise man, Davos said. He'd have liked you better as king in the north than some of the silver-headed brats his kin put on the throne. Jon's gaze drifted northward, over the low hills toward the unseen wall. Cersei won't like this, he said, nor anyone else who thinks the Iron Throne answers for the north. She'll send ravens, at least, maybe an army, if she can spare one. Let her, Davos said. If she can get one past the Reach and Dorne, past whatever fleet the Greyjoys have not managed to wreck yet. There's more stirring than snow in this realm. Word is there's a queen across the narrow sea who thinks herself the dragon come again. Daenerys Targaryen, Jon said, remembering Melisandre's muttered talk of prophecies and flames. Breaker of this, mother of that. They make her sound half a god. She's still made of flesh, Davos said. Bleeds, shits, and makes mistakes like the rest of us, I'd wager. But she has dragons, if the stories are true. That's enough to make sensible men fools. Jon imagined dragons in the northern sky, great shadows passing over the wall. If she comes as a conqueror, it won't matter to her who sits in Winterfell, he said. If she comes and ignores the dead, it won't matter who sits in King's Landing either. Then you'll have to make her see, Davos said. Her, Cersei, every lord who thinks the end of the world is a problem for their grandchildren. You've looked into the dark and seen what's there. They haven't. That's why it has to be you. Jon stared out into the night. Somewhere far away an owl called, soft and mournful. I never wanted to be the man it has to be, he said. All my life I wanted to be something simple. A Stark, a brother, a swordsman at my lord's side. Now I'm none of those things and too many at once. Jon Snow, Davos said, king in the north, son of a man who lied to keep you alive. A man the gods dragged back from death for some stubborn reason of their own. That's already more than simple. You won't find simple again, I'm afraid. Jon gave a short, sharp breath that was almost a laugh. You're a poor comfort, Davos Seaworth. I'm alive, Davos said. That's the only comfort the gods ever gave me. The rest I carved out myself. They stood in silence a while, the wind tugging at their cloaks. Below, the feast's noise dwindled as exhaustion claimed the castle. A drunk voice started a song about the young wolf, cracked on the high notes, and was shushed. When Stannis offered me a crown for the night's watch, Jon said at last, I refused. I told him the men of the watch were my brothers, that I had taken vows, that I was no king. His hand tightened on the cold stone. They put their knives in me anyway. Davos said gently, and you chose to come back. Remember that. The god or gods that sent you back didn't drop you here by chance. You chose to open your eyes. Maybe because some part of you knew the work wasn't done. The work is never done, Jon said. Then you'd best pace yourself, Davos replied. Kings who burn too bright tend to go out quick. Take the night, your grace. Tomorrow you can start figuring out how to drag the rest of the realm into this fight with you. He left Jon alone with the stars and the cold. Jon leaned his forehead against the rough stone and let his eyes close, just for a moment, listening to the wind. In its howl he fancied he heard distant wings and the creak of ice beginning to crack. Dawn came grudgingly to Winterfell, smearing a thin gray light over the snow-clogged yard. Jon had slept a little badly. His dreams had been crowded, blue eyes burning in dead faces, a throne of swords buried in snow, a woman's voice whispering a name that was and was not his. He was crossing the courtyard, speaking with the stablemaster about feed for the half-starved horses, when the shout came from the gatehouse. Riders on the road, a watchman cried. A girl and... 7 save us, what's that? The tone of his voice pulled Jon toward the gate before he'd even shaped the thought. Sansa was already there when he arrived, cloak thrown over a simple dress, her hair hastily braided. Frost flushed her cheeks, worry tightened her mouth. The great wooden doors groaned open on reluctant hinges. A gust of air knifed in, carrying fine snow and the flat, tired smell of the open road. Through the widening gap Jon saw a single figure trudging forward. A girl in rough furs, shoulders bowed under a dragging load. She hauled a makeshift sled fashioned from saplings and leather thongs. On it lay a bundled shape too long for a child, too small for a man. As they drew nearer, the snow-streaked face atop the furs resolved into features Jon had not seen in years except in memory. "Bran," he breathed. He was moving before he knew it, boots slipping in the churned slush. Sansa was a step behind. The girl stopped a little inside the gate, breath heaving, eyes rimmed in red. She clung to the sled's rope as though she might fall with it if she let go. Jon dropped to his knees beside the sled. Bran Stark stared up at him, older and thinner than when Jon had last seen him, but still Bran. The same mouth, the same stubborn line to his jaw. His legs lay stiff and wasted beneath the furs, untouched by the years he had spent away from home. "Jon," Bran said, voice scraped raw. "You look different." "So do you," Jon managed. His hands hovered, afraid to touch, then settled lightly on Bran's shoulders. They felt too light, too fragile. "We thought you were dead." "Gods, Bran, we all thought." "Everyone did," Bran said calmly. "I wasn't. I was elsewhere." Meera Reed straightened from where she'd half collapsed against the sled, rubbing her hands over aching shoulders. Her hair was a dark, tangled snarl. Exhaustion had carved hollows under her eyes. "He can explain later," she said to Jon. "He wanted to come home. I promised I'd get him here." She gave a crooked, tired smile. "I've never been so glad to see a bloody castle in my life." Sansa found her voice. "Bring them inside," she ordered. "Maester, blankets, hot water. Move." Servants scattered. Men hurried forward to lift Bran, too slowly for Jon's liking. He scooped his brother up himself, ignoring the protest in his own muscles. Bran's head lolled against his shoulder, his gaze drifting past Jon to the distant spike of the Godswood's heart tree, visible over inner walls and rooftops. "You've grown," Bran said as they crossed the yard. "You're king now." The word was a slap. Jon almost missed a step. "Who told you that?" he asked. Bran's mouth twitched faintly. "I saw," he said. "I see a great many things now." Later, after the maester had fussed and clucked over frostbitten fingers and worn-thin bodies, after Meera Reed had been bundled toward a bed with soup in her hands and disbelief in her eyes at the softness of a mattress, Jon and Sansa sat by Bran's bedside. The chamber smelt of herbs and old stone. Bran lay propped against pillows, color seeping slowly back into his face. His eyes were too old. They moved restlessly, tracking things Jon could not see. "You love to climb," Jon said, "because it was easier than everything else. Father used to say you'd break your neck one day. Seems you proved him half right." Bran smiled a fraction. "I fell," he said. "I've fallen many times. But that's not what matters." "What does?" Sansa asked. She sat stiffly in her chair, hands clasped tight enough to blanch her knuckles. "Where I went after," Bran said. "Beyond the wall, into the snow and the dark. Into a cave beneath old roots, where a man whose hands had grown into the tree taught me to see." His eyes went distant again. "He was the three-eyed raven. When he died, I had to become him. There was no one else." Sansa's fingers tightened further on the arm of her chair. "This is madness," she whispered. "It is truth," Bran said. "I see things that were, things that are, sometimes even things that might be. I see Father cleaning ice beneath the heart tree. I see him on his knees in King's Landing. I see you as a girl, Sansa, in a blue dress, twirling before a looking glass. I see Jon on the wall, staring north as the wind pulls at his cloak. I see all of it at once." "Enough," Sansa said, color draining from her face. "Bran, please, stop." "I can't," he said quietly. "I can only choose what I speak of." His gaze shifted to Jon, anchoring there. "I came home because you need to know what I've seen, before you march south, before she comes, before the dead do." "She?" Jon asked. "The Dragon Queen," Bran said. "Daenerys Targaryen, and others." His eyes darkened. as if clouded by a vision only he could see. But first you have to know who you are. The Godswood took the sound out of the world. Snow muffled the crunch of Jon's boots, the creak of the old trees, even Sansa's soft breath behind him. The heart tree stood at the center of it all, pale as bone in the dim light, red leaves stirring in a wind Jon could not feel. Its carved eyes seemed to follow them as Meera Reed pushed Bran's chair across the frozen ground. The pool beneath the weirwood was skinned with ice, dark water showing through a spiderweb of cracks. Jon remembered kneeling there as a boy, watching his breath fog while he tried to imagine the old gods listening. Now, as he faced the tree with Bran at his side and the north at his back, he felt very small. Meera set the chair where Bran could look straight into the heart tree's face. Sansa stopped a little way off, drawing her cloak around her. 2 guards lingered at the edge of the clearing, far enough not to intrude, close enough to hear a shout. Bran's gaze never left the weirwood. "You were never a Snow," he said. Jon's hand tightened on Longclaw's hilt. "I've been one my whole life," he said. "That won't change because you say it." "It's not because I say it," Bran answered. "It's because I've seen it." His eyes unfocused, pupils dilating until they looked almost black. "I see father riding south with 6 companions. I see a white tower at the end of the world, the Tower of Joy. I hear a woman screaming inside." Sansa stepped closer despite herself. "Lyanna," she whispered. Bran nodded slowly. "Lyanna Stark, our aunt. She lies in a bed soaked red, the sheets clinging to her like torn banners. A babe is in her arms. Dark hair. Your nose, Jon." Father comes to her, sword still bloody in his hand. He fought 3 of the Kingsguard to reach her. Ser Arthur Dayne, Ser Oswell went, Ser Gerald Hightower. They died there because they would not abandon Rhaegar's last hope. Jon's mouth had gone dry. Old Nan's tales of Rhaegar and Lyanna, of the tourney at Harrenhal and the crown of blue roses, crashed against the simple, hard image Bran conjured. "Rhaegar's hope," he said, ears roaring. "What hope?" "You," Bran said simply. "The child in Lyanna's arms. Her son by Rhaegar Targaryen. She begged father to protect you. If Robert finds him, he'll kill him," she said. "You know he will." So Eddard Stark, the most honest man in the realm, told a lie. Jon shook his head once hard. "No. I'm his bastard. Everyone knows. Everyone knows what father needed them to know." Bran cut in, his voice oddly flat. "He brought you home and called you his. He let Catelyn Stark hate you rather than make you a corpse in a cradle. He carried that lie to his grave." Bran's eyes sharpened, fixing on Jon's. "Your name was never meant to be Snow." The gods would seem to tilt. Jon grabbed the arm of Bran's chair to steady himself. Sansa had gone white as the bark behind them. "If this is true," she began, then faltered. "If this is true, what is his name?" Bran's gaze went distant again, as if he were listening to some echo only he could hear. "Lyanna whispered it as she put you into father's arms," he said. "She wanted you to have a hero's name, a king's name, Aegon. Aegon Targaryen." The name fell between them like an axe. Jon could almost hear the forest reacting. The groan of branches, the whisper of snow from high limbs. "Aegon," Sansa repeated, as if tasting the syllables. "If you are Rhaegar's son, then by every law of the 7 kingdoms, you are heir to the Iron Throne. Not Cersei, not this dragon queen. You, I am Jon," he said, more harshly than he intended. "Jon Snow, I grew up in these halls. I sat at the back of the room when you sat at father's right hand. I took the black. I bled on the wall. That's who I am." "That's who you chose to be," Bran said. "Your blood is something else. Stark and Targaryen both. Ice and fire." His gaze slid back to the weirwood. "The old gods know it. The gods at the Sept would too, if there were any left in the north." Jon stared up at the carved face. Red sap had leaked from the grooves of its eyes and dried in thin, dark streaks. "If this is true," he said slowly, "then Ned Stark lied to everyone he ever knew. To Robert, To Mother. To you." His voice slipped on the last word. "He lied to protect you," Sansa said. She came to stand on Bran's other side, closing the circle. "He died for his honor in King's Landing. Perhaps this was part of it. He couldn't tell the truth without signing your death warrant. So he wore the dishonor." Jon thought of the man who had never once spoken his mother's name, who had endured Catelyn Stark's coldness and his children's questions in silence. A man who had stood as his son when he had not been, and now was father to a harebrained lie that had somehow become the North's last hope. "I don't want that throne," Jon said. "I never have." "It may not matter what you want," Bran replied. "The realm will hear of you. Some will say you're a bastard pretender. Others will say you're the true king returned from snow and death. Either way, they will look to you." He turned his head slightly. "The dead are coming, Jon. You've seen them. You know what they are. When they come, crowns and names won't matter. But they're the only things that will move the living before it's too late." Snowflakes whispered down through the red branches, melting on Jon's cheeks. He could not tell if the wetness there was snowmelt or something else. "What am I supposed to do?" he asked the heart tree, the gods, his brother himself. Bran's answer was as merciless as winter. "Decide who you are," he said, "and then make the rest of the world see it before the dead arrive." The ale stink of the old cask room barely covered the smell of tallow and cold stone. They had claimed the space as a council chamber because it was out of the way and had a solid door. Now a heavy table sat under a brace of candles, its scarred surface buried beneath maps. The North was there in faded ink. The line of the wall, the gift, the jagged edge of the mountains, the neck and the twins. Farther south, the Trident and King's Landing were scribbled in sharp strokes, as if Davos's hand had grown more impatient the farther from home he drew. Jon stood at the head of the table, Sansa seated to his right, Davos to his left. Tormund lounged at the far corner, chair tilted back on two legs. Lyanna Mormont occupied a stool dragged over so she could see, arms folded, eyes bright and hard. Bran's chair waited near the hearth, Meera Reed behind it, watchful. Peter Baelish leaned in the shadows, half in the firelight, half out. "The North believes I'm Ned Stark's bastard," Jon said, eyesight drifting over the inked ridges and rivers. "They raised me up as king in the North for that man's sake as much as mine. If we tell them who my parents were, they'll whisper dragon under their breath," Davos said. "Some with wonder, some with a shiver, some with anger," Sansa added. "They remember what the Mad King did, what Dragonfire did to northern men at the Trident." Her gaze slid to Jon. "And dragons are not the only ones with claim to the name Targaryen now." Baelish's smile was a pale curve. "No, there is another across the sea," he said. "Daenerys Targaryen, born in exile. 3 dragons at her side, if gossip can be believed." "It can," Bran said quietly. All eyes swung toward him. "I've seen them, 3 shadows against a red sky, flame pouring from their mouths. I've seen her walking out of fire." He drifted a little, his voice flattening. "She wants what was taken from her family, a throne of swords and the world that comes with it." "And what do you want?" Baelish asked Jon delicately. "The North? The Wall? Or all of it? It is a rare man who can claim 2 crowns at once." "I want the living to survive," Jon said. "The North first because it's closest to the dead, but the rest of the realm as well. Cersei Lannister won't fight the White Walkers until they're at her doors. Maybe this Dragon Queen will. If knowing my name can make them listen, then I'll use it. But I won't start a southern war while the dead march." "The Southern War has already started," Davos pointed out. "Cersei blew up a sept and crowned herself on the ashes. The Tyrells and Martells sharpened their knives. Euron Greyjoy sails gods nowhere, looking for destruction. You don't get to sit this one out, Your Grace. Not when you wear a crown of your own." "So we tell the lords," Sansa said slowly. "Now, before anyone else does. Before some southern raven arrives with its own version of the truth." Lyanna thumped a fist on the map, oblivious to the candle's flicker. They'll stand by you, she said. Dragon or wolf, you're still the man who fought for Winterfell. If any lord says otherwise, House Mormont will remind him what loyalty looks like. And if one or two decide they prefer a Stark with no dragon blood? Baelish asked mildly. His eyes rested on Sansa for half a heartbeat too long. If they whisper that the girl they grew up with is safer than the boy who might march south for a throne? I'm not a girl any longer, Sansa said, steel in her tone. And if they try to set me against my brother, they will learn what the North does to men who sow division. Jon felt something like pride stir at that. Even as unease crawled down his spine. Littlefinger sowed division with nothing more than a look. He did not need truth to twist. If we hide this, it will come out anyway, Jon said. When it does, they'll think we lied because we were ashamed, or because we meant to surprise them. It will rot everything we're trying to build. He drew a breath. We call them to the hall. We tell them what Bran has seen. We let them decide if they still call me king. And if they don't? Tormund asked, interested. Then I go back to being Jon Snow, Jon said. And someone else can wear this crown. The dead will still come. I'll still fight them. Bran's pale eyes looked through him and elsewhere all at once. They will still call you king, he said softly. By one name or another. You can't walk away from this, Jon. Not anymore. Jon nodded, feeling the weight settle. Then we tell them, he said. All of it. Baelish smiled his thin, secret smile, as if that was the move he had been waiting for all along. The corridor outside the hall was cold and close, the air smelling faintly of smoke and wet wool. Sansa's footsteps were soft on the old flagstones as she slipped away from the council, her thoughts still turning around Bran's vision and Jon's stone-set decision. Lady Sansa, Peter Baelish said, materializing out of a small alcove like a shadow detaching itself from the wall. You move like a ghost. I nearly missed you. She did not start. She had grown used to him appearing where he had no right to be. You were listening, she said, as you always do. I have ears, he said mildly, and an interest in the fate of the North. He fell into step beside her, hands folded in his sleeves. Your brother means to lay his heart on the table and let your lords cut it to pieces if they so choose. Brave, foolish, honest, Sansa said. Baelish laughed softly. Honesty is not a virtue in politics. It's a weakness. A blade others can seize. His eyes flicked to her. You know this. King's Landing taught you as much. She stopped near a narrow arrow slit, gray light striping her face. King's Landing taught me that trusting men who say they want to help me gets me beaten and married to monsters, she said. Including you. His smile did not falter, but something in his eyes tightened. I misjudged Ramsay, he said. I have said as much. You sold me, Sansa said quietly, like a brood mare. That is what you misjudged. She drew a breath, forcing herself not to flinch from his gaze. If you have a point, make it. You are Eddard Stark's eldest surviving trueborn child, Baelish said. Whatever blood runs in Jon's veins. The lords of the North grew up under your father's rule. They look at him and see a bastard raised at the back of the hall. They look at you and see the winter roses their oaths were sworn beneath. They see the girl who wanted to marry Joffrey, Sansa said bitterly. The hostage, the fool. They see a woman who survived Joffrey, survived Cersei, survived the Boltons, Baelish countered. Survival is the only currency that matters now. You have it in abundance. Jon has something else. A miracle, a name, and a crown he never wanted. He stepped closer. The North will follow him, for now. But when he leaves, how do you know he will? She cut in. Because he must, Baelish said. You heard him. The dead in the North. A dragon queen in the South. He will go to meet her. Men like Jon cannot sit still when there is a war to be fought. While he is gone, there will be a void. Voids invite daggers. His breath misted faintly between them. You can fill that void, as regent, as lady of Winterfell, as queen one day. I don't want to be queen, Sansa said. The word tasted of burnt doves and poisoned wine. Not the way you mean it. You don't have to want the title, he said. Only the power to keep yourself and your home safe. With Jon gone, you can hold the lords together or let them scatter. They will listen to you until someone convinces them to listen to someone else. Meaning you, she let scorn edge her tone. Meaning any number of men who think they deserve more than they have, Baelish replied calmly. Do you think Umber and Karstark will be content? Do you think the Freys have forgotten the North? He tilted his head. You cannot fight every enemy with a sword. Some require other weapons. I can put those in your hands. She looked at him a long moment. You put Ramsay in my bed, she said. That is the only weapon I remember. His composure cracked, just for a heartbeat. I misjudged his proclivities, he said. I will regret that for the rest of my life. You will regret it if you come near me with another scheme, Sansa said. Her voice was low and steady. Jon may be a king who doesn't understand your games, but I do. I'll smile at you in the hall because I must. I'll use your swords because the North is thin. But don't mistake necessity for trust. If you move against my brother, I will be the one to throw you from the walls. Silence stretched between them, taut as a drawn bow. Then Baelish inclined his head, courtly as ever. As you say, my lady, he murmured. I live only to serve. She turned away, leaving him in the half-light of the corridor. Behind her, the quiet was full of old ghosts and new calculations. Ahead, the hall waited, full of men who would soon hear that their king was something more and less than they had thought. She squared her shoulders and walked toward them, wearing her father's name like armor. The great hall of Winterfell felt smaller the second time Jon stood at its heart. There were no songs now, no overflowing trenchers. The air was chill, the fires burned low, and the faces turned toward him were sober. The northern lords sat where they had before, Manderly's bulk spilling over his bench, Glover's straight-backed severity, Karstark's narrowed eyes. Vale knights were scattered among them, falcons stitched on their cloaks. Behind Jon, on the dais, Bran sat in his chair, hands folded, Sansa beside him, her face composed. Thank you for coming, Jon began. The formal words felt strange, but necessary. You named me king in the north. You gave me your trust and your oaths. There is something I have to tell you that touches both. Murmurs ran through the benches. Lyanna Mormont leaned forward, eyes fixed on him, as if daring him to betray her faith. You all know me as Jon Snow, Ned Stark's bastard, Jon said. Some of you knew me as a boy, others have only seen me on the battlefield. You raised me up for what I did, not for the name I bear. But names matter in the South, and there is more to mine than I ever knew. He looked up at Bran. My brother has gifts, he said. He has seen things no one living could have seen. In the Godswood, in the past. Whispers rose. Men glanced toward Bran uneasily, as if expecting him to sprout leaves. Bran's voice, when he spoke, cut through their noise. I see father riding south at the end of Robert's rebellion, he said. I see him climb a tower where Lyanna Stark lies dying with a babe in her arms. I see her whisper her son's name to him and beg him to keep him safe from Robert Baratheon. He looked at Jon. I see Eddard Stark carry that lie all the way to Winterfell and call that boy his own bastard, to keep him alive. Silence fell like a slammed door. Manderly's jaw dropped. Karstark's fingers tightened on the table. Someone swore softly under his breath. Lyanna Stark had a child by Rhaegar Targaryen. Bran went on. He is not dead. He is not lost across the sea. He has been here all along. You named him king. The hall seemed to tilt under Jon's feet. By Bran's sight, he said, forcing the words past the tightness in his throat. And by Howland Reed's written testimony, my mother was Lyanna Stark. My father was Rhaegar Targaryen. Ned Stark was not my sire, but he was my father in every way that mattered. He lied to protect me from Robert Baratheon's wrath. There it was, laid bare, the heart of him sword naked on the stone. For all your lives, "You have called me bastard," Jon said. "Some kindly, some not. Now you hear I am something else. I won't tell you what to make of it. Only this, whatever blood runs in my veins, I bled on the wall and in the snow for the north. I will keep bleeding if I must." A lord halfway down the hall lurched to his feet. "We're to believe this on the word of a boy who fell from a tower and says trees talk to him?" he demanded. Bran's gaze settled on him. "Lord Serwyn," he said, "you wept when your first son was born, though no one saw it but your wife. You named him Torrhen but wished, secretly, that you'd chosen Brandon. Your second son you named for your father. You break 3 fasts a week and tell yourself the gods won't mind." Serwyn sat down slowly, face gone gray. Davos stepped forward, his rough features serious. "You all heard the tales when your men returned from the wall," he said. "Jon Snow was stabbed by his own brothers. I saw him laid out, cold as the stones they put him on. I saw him stand again. You accepted that miracle because you saw what he did with the life he was given. This is no stranger." Tormund snorted from the back. "You lot raised up a corpse as your king, and now you quibble about his parents," he said. "He fought for you. He killed your enemies. He stands in front when the dead come. That's more than most can say." Wyman Manderly pushed to his feet, joints creaking. "If this is true," he said slowly, "it means the South has saddled us with false kings for years while the rightful heir roamed our snows. It means the lions sit in a seat that belongs to a man who has already bled for my grandchildren." His fleshy hand thumped the table. "I will not turn from him because his blood is older than I thought." He went to one knee again, wheezing. "A Stark by heart and a dragon by blood," he said. "The king in the north. Whatever kingship he may claim besides, that is the one I care for." Lyanna Mormont followed without hesitation, her small body folding gracefully. "You're still the man who stood alone in the snow," she said. "King in the north, wolf or dragon. House Mormont follows you." One by one, slower than before but just as surely, the lords knelt. Some with grudging faces, others with fierce pride. When the cry of "the king in the north" went up again, Jon heard a new note threaded through it, a name not spoken but felt. Aegon. He did not know yet whether that name would save them or doom them, only that it clung to him now like another layer of mail. Night dragged its feet across Winterfell, reluctant to let go of the day's revelations. The hall emptied in eddies and swirls, lords peeling away in knots to mutter in corners, to send hurried ravens, to drink themselves into easier sleep. Jon fled as soon as propriety allowed, the weight of their gaze burning between his shoulder blades. The Godswood received him with its familiar, indifferent silence. Snow lay deeper here, untouched by feet, pristine except where the roots of the heart tree broke through. The red leaves rustled against each other with a sound like old paper. Jon stood before the carved face, cloak wrapped tight against the creeping cold. The pool at the weirwood's feet had frozen solid, a dark mirror that reflected him in warped edges. Cloak, sword, pale face, hair blown by the wind. "Aegon," he said aloud, testing the name in the empty air. It sounded wrong, too heavy in his mouth like a helmet that did not quite fit. "Jon Snow, Jon Stark, Aegon Targaryen." He let out a thin breath. Too many names for one man. The heart tree, unsurprisingly, said nothing. "When I was a boy, all I wanted was to be a Stark," Jon went on. His voice felt small under the open sky. "To sit with Robb and Bran at father's table, to wear his colors openly. Now I find out I'm something else, something more, and it feels like another way to be pushed away." The wind sighed through the branches. He thought of Eddard Stark's quiet eyes, of the day he'd left for the wall without ever once saying whose son he truly was. "You lied for me," Jon said. "You let everyone think the worst of you and of me. You let your wife hate me. You died with that on your shoulders. If this is what your lie bought, I hope it was worth the wait." Footsteps crunched softly behind him. He didn't turn. "Bran," he said. "You talk to them as if they'll answer," Bran observed, wheeling up beside him. Meera lingered at a distance, giving them space. "They've listened to better men than me," Jon replied. "Father, Robb. And now you," Bran said. "Whether you want it or not." Jon's mouth twitched in something like a grimace. "You see the future," he said, "or pieces of it. Is there a path where I stay here and we build our strength and the dead break on the wall like waves on rock?" Bran's gaze went to the north, beyond the walls, beyond the horizon. For a moment his pupils dilated, his breathing slowed. "No," he said, "I see the wall broken. I see dead men walking through a cleft in the ice. I see the Night King on a field of snow that is not beyond the wall at all. I see dragons over Winterlands. Whatever you do, the dead come. The question is how many stand against them, and who leads them." Jon swallowed. "Davos thinks a dragon queen might help. That dragons will make the living believe what they don't want to." "Fire against ice," Bran murmured. "The songs have always spoken of it. But fire burns more than its enemies. I've seen cities in embers under dragon shadows, Jon. I've seen what your aunt does to those who won't kneel." "She's still my aunt," Jon said weakly, the words strange and distant. "If you're right, if I'm right, she's also a queen who has spent her life chasing a throne made of swords," Bran said. "She will not give that up because you ask her nicely, but she might bend. If she believes you, if she sees the dead with her own eyes." Snowflakes caught in Bran's hair, melting unnoticed. His hands rested in his lap, thin and still. "You won't stop thinking about going to her," he said. "To Dragonstone. I can feel it." "It's dragonglass," Jon said. "Sam wrote from the Citadel. Dragonstone sits on mountains of it. Enough to arm every man in the north. If we can't kill the White Walkers, nothing else we do matters." "Then you have to go," Bran said. "You have to talk to her, to Cersei, to anyone who will listen. You have to stand where they can see you and tell them what's coming." "And leave Winterfell leaderless?" Jon asked. "Sansa will lead," Bran said. "You know that. She already does. The lords love you, but they trust her. They will follow her so long as she can point to you and say you are coming back." He turned to look up at Jon. "You ask the gods what you're supposed to do. This is it." Jon wished, fiercely and futilely, that the gods would choose someone else. Robb, Ned, some southern prince who'd spent his youth learning to play the Game of Thrones instead of hunting in the Wolfswood. But the old gods remained silent, and Bran's strange, two knowing eyes did not. "I'll speak to the lords," Jon said at last. The decision settled in his chest like a stone, heavy, but solid. "I'll tell them what Sam sent. I'll tell Sansa what I need her to be. And then I'll go. South," Bran said, "where Starks go to die." "I'm not only a Stark," Jon replied. "That's the point, isn't it?" Bran's expression was impossible to read. "You're what you choose to be," he said. "Just remember who you were when the South tries to turn you into something else." Morning light turned the great hall's smoke into pale beams, striping the long tables and shining off the scattered plates. The feast debris was gone. In its place, maps sprawled across the central board, held down by daggers and cups. Davos held one letter separate from the rest. Its seal, broken and clumsily pressed back together, bore the Citadel's tower and rook. The parchment itself smelled faintly of dust and must, as if it had soaked in old knowledge before it ever touched ink. "Read it again," Sansa said. Davos cleared his throat. "To Jon Snow, Lord Commander of the Night's Watch," he began. You can tell he started this before the news reached him. He shot Jon a sideways look. He struck through that part, see, and written King in the North in the margin, then apologized for the blot. His rough finger traced the cramped lines as he read. "I hope this finds you alive. The maesters don't listen to me, but their books can't stop me opening them. I found records of obsidian dragonglass, not just under the wall but in great quantities on Dragonstone. Old accounts speak of cliffs and caves full of the stuff. You know what dragonglass does to White Walkers. If there's any way to claim it, you must. Winter isn't coming. It's here. Your friend, Samwell Tarly." The final line caught in Davos's throat. Jon could hear Sam's anxious earnestness in every word. Dragonstone, Tormund said, rolling the word around like a stone between his teeth. That's a long way to ride for pretty rocks. Pretty rocks that kill White Walkers, Jon said. He tapped the map where Sam had sketched the island's shape in his clumsy hand. Sam wouldn't risk a raven for nothing. If there's that much dragonglass there, we can arm every man old enough to lift a spear. Every woman, too, if they'll take them. Dragonstone belongs to the crown, Robert Glover said. And right now that's Cersei Lannister, for all the good it does us. She won't pack it in crates and send it north because a man in furs asks nicely. She may not have it to send, Davos said. If Daenerys Targaryen is half as bold as her stories, Dragonstone will be the first rock she claims when she lands. It was her family's seat before the conquest. And if she does take it, that makes it easier, Jon said. Words he would not have imagined himself saying a year ago. I can talk to her. I can tell her what's coming. If she wants to sit the Iron Throne, she needs people alive to bend the knee. She needs us. The North bent the knee to dragons once before, Lord Serwyn said. It didn't end so badly. The Mad King came later. The Mad King is what most of my lords remember, Sansa countered. Him and what Robert did to his children. Her gaze slid to Jon for a heartbeat, the weight of Bran's revelation in it. We'll be asking them to swallow old hatred and older fear. Jon met her eyes. We'll be asking them to choose between that and freezing in their beds, he said. The dead won't care if Daenerys Targaryen's father burned Rickard Stark. Lyanna Mormont thumped her small fist on the table. If Dragon Queen wants to help us fight, she can, she said. If she wants us to kneel, she can walk through a blizzard of arrows first. Simple. Davos's mouth twitched. Spoken like a true northerner. Bran, who had listened in silence until then, spoke. Dragonstone matters, he said. Not just the dragonglass. There are old carvings there. Scrolls. Walls the children and the first men touched. I've seen glimpses. Stories etched in stone about the long night. About how they fought it before. His eyes clouded. You need that knowledge as much as you need the glass. Jon looked at Sam's letter again, at the ink blots where his friend's quill had trembled. We have to go, he said, to Dragonstone, to this Daenerys, to anyone who will listen. We can't win this war by ourselves. You mean to go yourself, Sansa said. It was not a question. I have to, Jon replied. No one else has seen what I've seen. No one else can make them believe. If I send a lord in my stead, they'll be received politely, fed, and sent away. I need to stand before this queen and look her in the eye. You'll be putting your head in the lion's mouth, Glover warned. Or the dragon's. I've done worse, Jon said. Died. For one. That earned a few strained chuckles, quickly smothered. He turned to Sansa. I leave the North in your hands, he said. As my regent, you'll speak with my voice. The hall seemed to exhale. Words like regent and queen hung unspoken between lords who had only just accepted their new king. Sansa's knuckles whitened on the map's edge. Then we should tell them, she said. All of it. What Sam has found. What Bran has seen. That you mean to go south in spite of every Stark's bones crying out against it. She drew herself up. They deserve the truth, even if it frightens them. Jon nodded. We'll call them together once more, he said, and then I'll ride for White Harbor. The council drifted apart again, men filing out in hushed knots to carry the news back to their own halls. Jon lingered over the maps until the room was empty save for Sansa and the dying candles. You decided this before you told them, she said. It wasn't accusation so much as acknowledgement. Going south. You made up your mind last night in the Godswood. I did, Jon said. I wanted them to hear it after they knew why. After they knew Sam's letter wasn't just another tale from the wall. She circled the table toward him, fingertips brushing the edges of parchment. You ask a great deal, she said. You ask the North to accept that their king is a dragon's son and a Stark's nephew. You ask them to let that king leave before winter has even set its teeth in. You ask them to trust me. I do, Jon said. Because I have to. Because there's no one else I trust more. Her mouth tightened. You didn't always, she said. I was a fool, he replied. I saw a girl who wanted songs and pretty things and thought that was all she was. I was blind to what King's Landing and the rest of the world did to you. He met her eyes. I see you now. She looked away, as if his regard stung. You also see an answer, she said. Leave Sansa Stark in Winterfell with a crown just out of reach, and all the lords who love the idea of a Stark more than a Targaryen will settle around her like snow. What happens if they decide they would rather keep me than welcome you back? Then they'll be wrong, Jon said, and I'll convince them of it when I return. And if you don't return? Sansa asked. Her voice had gone very soft. If Cersei decides to send your head back in a box? If this Daenerys decides one dragon on the board is enough and burns you to ash? Jon felt the images land. His skull in a crate, blackened bones scattered on black rock. Then you will rule, he said. You'll keep the North alive long enough to face the dead, with or without me. She gave a short, sharp breath that might have been a laugh and might have been a sob. Starks who go south don't come back, she said. Father, Rob, even I came back as someone else. You're not a Stark, not by blood, but... She trailed off, pressing her lips together. But Winterfell is still my home, Jon finished for her. Whatever name Bran gives me, I am still the boy who learned to swing a sword in this yard. I won't let anyone take it from you, from us. He hesitated. That includes Littlefinger. Her face shuddered at the name. I can handle Peter Baelish, she said. I know what he is, Jon said. I may not understand his game, but I know he's always playing. If he tries to set you up as some rival queen while I'm gone. He already tried, Sansa said, in his way, with words about thrones and pictures of me sitting on them. I told him if he moved against you, I would be the one to throw him from the walls. Her mouth curved, briefly vicious. I meant it. Jon believed her. Then watch him, he said. Listen to him if you must. Use what he offers, but don't let him set you against our own. Against me. He searched her face. If the North splits now, the dead won't need to do anything but walk in and take what's left. Sansa's shoulders sagged a fraction, some of the anger burning down to ash. I don't want your crown, she said. I don't want any crown, but I won't let another man decide my fate without my say. Not again. Then don't, Jon said. Decide it with me. He reached across the table and put his hand over hers. The gesture was hesitant, as if remembering how to be brother and sister after too many years apart. She stared at their joined hands, then closed her fingers lightly around his. Promise you'll come back, she said. I can't, he said, hating the words. Not honestly, not after everything we've seen. I can promise that if there's a path back, I'll take it. That I won't stay in the south to play at king while the north freezes. Something in her eased at that. All right, she said. Then I'll keep Winterfell in one piece for you to come back to. I'll stand in front of the lords and remind them who fought for them when they start to doubt. And I'll listen to Bran when he tells me what he sees, even if it frightens me. She squeezed his hand once before letting go. Just come back soon if you can. I'm tired of being the Stark who stays behind. So am I, Jon said quietly. In King's Landing, winter came slower. The sky was the color of old parchment rather than steel, the air damp instead of knife-sharp. But the chill that had settled into the Red Keep's throne room had nothing to do with weather. Cersei Lannister sat on the Iron Throne as if it grew from her spine, all sharp edges and hard angles. Black silk and dark fur fell in severe lines from her shoulders. The crown on her brow was a circlet of iron points, austere and unforgiving. Below her, Qyburn held a parchment at arm's length, blinking at the cramped northern script. A raven from the north, your grace, he said. From Lord Wyman Manderly of White Harbor, speaking on behalf of the assembled lords of the north and the Vale. Cersei toyed with the stem of her wine cup. "The fat merman writes?" she said. "What does he want? An apology for not sending my regards to his last feast." "He wishes to inform you," Qyburn said, "that they have elected Jon Snow, formerly of the Night's Watch, bastard son of Eddard Stark, as king in the north by acclamation." His pale eyes flicked up. He also notes that new truths have come to light regarding this Jon Snow's parentage. Jaime shifted his weight beside the throne, his golden hand catching the light like a captured sun. "New truths," he said dryly. "Those are always dangerous." Qyburn went on. "Lord Manderly claims that Eddard Stark brought home from Robert's rebellion not his bastard, but Rhaegar Targaryen's legitimate son by Lyanna Stark. That Ned Stark raised the boy as his own to hide him from his late majesty's wrath." "Rhaegar's son," Cersei repeated slowly. The words tasted strange. Rhaegar had been the ghost at the feast of her youth. The prince who had passed her by for Lyanna, the rival Robert could never forgive. Convenient that such a child appears now, when it pleases the North. "It would explain Stark's stubbornness on some matters," Jaime said quietly. "Why he never spoke of the boy's mother. Why he wore dishonor like a hair shirt for years." Cersei remembered Eddard Stark kneeling in the dust of the Red Keep. His hard face set as he confessed treason he hadn't committed to save his daughter's life. She remembered the swing of Eilen Payne's sword, the spray of blood on Joffrey's new boots. "It explains nothing that matters," she said. "Rhaegar is dead. Lyanna is dead. Robert is dead. If they birthed a brood of dragon bastards and tucked them into every northern hall, it would not change who sits this throne. But it may change who others think should sit it," Qyburn said gently. "Smaller lords in the Riverlands, in the Vale, they remember the old stories of Targaryen rule more fondly than they should. A northern king who can claim both Stark honor and dragon blood is appealing." "A pretender," Cersei said. "We have one of those across the sea already. How many dragon spawn does this realm need?" Jaime's jaw clenched. "If Daenerys Targaryen comes with dragons, and this Jon Snow marches south behind a pack of hungry northerners, we could find ourselves facing two fronts," he said. "It would be best if they fought each other." Qyburn inclined his head. "If the boy is truly Rhaegar's, Daenerys may see him as rival as much as kin," he said. "If he is not, she may see him as an insult. In either case, their interests do not naturally align." "Good," Cersei said. "Let them tear at each other. Wolves and dragons and dead men in the snow." She tapped her fingernail against the cup. "Send no answer. If the North wishes to play at crowns in the snow, let them. I will not dignify their little game with a reply." "And if he comes south?" Jaime asked. "If this northern king decides his blood entitles him to more than a cold hall and a pack of hungry lords?" Cersei's smile was thin. "Then we will do what lions do," she said. "We will wait in our den, teeth bared, and let him come close enough to bleed." She thought, not without bitterness, of Robert's obsession with killing dragonspawn. If he had known there was a Targaryen pup tucked under the Stark's table, he would have ridden north himself, hammer in hand, to dash its brains out. He had never been so energetic about protecting their own children. Dragons, wolves, ice demons. She lifted her cup. "Let them all come. The Iron Throne has seen worse plagues." The sea wind cut colder than anything Daenerys Targaryen had felt in years. It tasted of salt and storms and distant ice. Nothing like the hot, dusty gusts that had whipped through the streets of Meereen. She stood at the prow of her flagship, cloak snapping at her ankles, watching the jagged silhouette of Dragonstone grow on the horizon. Black rock thrust up from the gray water like the spine of some ancient beast. Smoke coiled faintly from fissures where the island still bled heat. "Home," she murmured, though she had never seen it before. "Of a sort. Of our sorts," Tyrion Lannister corrected gently at her shoulder. "I grew up staring at it from my father's windows. It was the first thing of yours he meant to take away, once the rebellion ended." She glanced down at him, the corners of her mouth ticking up. "He did not succeed." "Not yet," Tyrion said. though I have no doubt my dear siblings will be thinking of ways to change that as we speak." As if conjured by his words, Varys approached with a folded scrap of parchment in his hands. "Your Grace," he said, "a raven reached one of our advance ships. The captain sent this on at once." Daenerys took it. The parchment was rough, the seal crude blue wax. The script inside was sharp and deliberate, each letter hammered into place as if through stubbornness. "A bastard in the north," Daenerys said after a moment, "named king by his lords. Jon Snow." Tyrion's brows climbed. "The Lord Commander of the Night's Watch," he said, "or former Lord Commander. I heard he was murdered by his own men. Never trust an organization that forbids marriage. It turns the resentment inward." "He got better," Varys said dryly. "So the reports from Castle Black say." Daenerys read on. The letter spoke of a battle against House Bolton, of banners raised in a long hall, of King in the North shouted until the rafters shook. Then, in smaller writing added by another hand, the rumors about Jon Snow's birth. Lyanna Stark, Rhaegar Targaryen, a child smuggled home under a false name. "My brother's son," Daenerys said quietly. "If true," Tyrion said, "if Eddard Stark risked Robert's wrath to save Rhaegar's child, it would fit what we know of him, and of Robert, but rumor is a coin frequently clipped." Daenerys remembered Viserys' constant litany of wrongs. The usurper's dogs had butchered Rhaegar's children, dashed a baby's head against a wall. Lyanna Stark's name had been a curse to him, a wound that never stopped bleeding. To hear that Lyanna had chosen Rhaegar, that she had borne him a child, Viserys would have raved. "He is a rival claimant," she said. "If Rhaegar's son lives, his claim to the Iron Throne is stronger than mine under Westerosi law." Tyrion sipped his wine, considering. "Under that law, yes," he said. "But the law is what people will follow or ignore depending on what suits them. A northern king who has never left the snows is a very different prospect from a dragon queen who arrives with Dothraki, unsullied, and 3 very large children." Varys folded his hands into his sleeves. "He is also the only man who seems to be taking the tales from beyond the wall seriously," he said. "His men speak of dead things that walk, of a night king. He made peace with wildlings to fight them. That is not the act of a fool." Daenerys looked skyward. The dragons wheeled high above, dark shapes against the clouds. Drogon dipped lower for a moment, a streak of shadow and flame, before soaring up again. "I did not come this far to have another man's claim set in front of mine like a wall," she said. "I have walked through fire. I have freed slaves and burned tyrants. I will not step aside because the realm finds a new story to tell itself." She folded the parchment. "But I will speak to him." Tyrion's mouth quirked. "Invite him," he suggested. "King in the north. Ask him to come and bend the knee to his queen." "And if he refuses?" she asked. Tyrion tipped his head toward the dragons. "Then you can decide what sort of ant you wish to be." Daenerys turned back to the sea. Dragonstone loomed nearer, all black angles and carved beasts. "Send a raven," she said, "to Jon Snow. Tell him Daenerys Stormborn of House Targaryen invites him to Dragonstone to discuss the war that matters." "The war that matters?" Varys repeated. "The one against the dead," she said. "If his tales are true, then every throne in Westeros is only as solid as the wall. And you know what happens to walls. Snow fell in fine, steady flakes that turned the courtyard into a blurred painting of gray stone and white air. Saddled horses stamped and snorted, their breath pluming. Men moved like shadows, checking straps, tightening buckles, loading saddlebags. Jon stood by his horse, one gloved hand curled around the bridle. Ghost sat at his feet like a pale sentinel, fur dusted with snow. The direwolf's red eyes flicked from face to face, measuring, always alert. Sansa descended the steps from the great hall with Bran's chair beside her. Meera guided it carefully over the icy stone. Lyanna Mormont trotted in their wake, her small boots leaving neat prints in the fresh fall. At the top of the stairs, Peter Baelish lingered, too composed, watching. "The lords are gathering in the hall," Sansa said when she reached him. Frost clung to her lashes. "They'll hear that you're gone from my own mouth, not from the servants gossiping." "They'll hear that you're ruling for me," Jon said. "That was the important part." "For them," she agreed. "I'll remind them as often as needed." Her gaze slid to the line of horses, to Davos tightening a girth and Tormund haranguing a groom. "I still think you're mad." "So do I," Davos called without looking up. "But here we are." Bran's eyes tracked the movement in the yard, as calm and unreadable as ever. "You'll see a great many things in the south," he said. "Some you'll wish you hadn't." Jon stepped closer to his brother. "Anything I should know before I go?" Bran's gaze drifted, as if following some invisible bird. "I see a hall of black stone filled with dragon carvings and long shadows," he said. "I see a woman with silver hair sitting on a throne of rock, with fire behind her. I see you standing before her with snow still on your boots." His eyes focused again. "I don't see what words you say, or what she does." "That's comforting," Davos muttered. Jon huffed, half a laugh. "You've done enough," he told Bran. "More than enough. Stay off tall towers while I'm gone." Bran's mouth curled faintly. "I go where ravens go now, not where my feet would take me," he said. "Just remember who you are when they start telling you what you should be." Lyanna Mormont stepped forward, chin jutting. "If the Dragon Queen tries to make you kneel, remember we named you king," she said. "If she burns you, we'll remember that too." "I'll do my best not to be burned," Jon said. "I've died once. I don't recommend it." Sansa's mouth tightened. "Don't joke about that," she said. "I'm not," Jon replied. He reached for her, hesitant, then folded her into a rough embrace. For an instant they were children again, the bastard half-brother and the Lord's daughter, trying to find space in the same hall. Then the moment passed, and they were king and regent, each carrying scars the other could not see. "Keep them together," he said into her hair. "If they start to splinter, remind them what waits in the snow." "I will," she said. When she drew back, her eyes were bright but dry. "And if Littlefinger whispers in their ears, I'll cut his tongue out." Jon looked up toward the man at the top of the stairs. Baelish smiled thinly, as if he'd heard and found it amusing. "Guard Winterfell," Jon said. "Guard each other." He swung into the saddle. The horse shifted under him, eager to move. Ghost rose and padded to the gate, tail low. Davos mounted with a wince. "Well then," he said, "off to see a woman with dragons. Can't say I ever thought that would be on my list." Tormund grinned, teeth white in his beard. "I want to see the look on her face when she sees me," he said. "She'll think all wildlings look like this and start dreaming of red-bearded princes." "She may throw you off a wall," Davos said. "I might help." Jon raised his hand. "Open the gates," he called. The great doors groaned outward. Beyond lay the white road, the black trunks of the wolfswood, the long, hard path to the sea. Jon looked back one last time, at Sansa straight and still, at Bran pale hands folded, at Winterfell rising gray against the snow. "I'll come back," he said, mostly to himself. Then he nudged his horse forward and rode out into the storm. The Kingsroad ran south like an old scar, half hidden under fresh snow. Trees crowded close on either side. Dark pines bowed under white burdens. The sky was low, a flat lid of cloud that turned the world into shades of gray. Jon rode at the head of the small column, Ghost padding silently beside his horse. Behind him, Davos rode with his usual seaman's balance, more comfortable with the sway of a deck than the jolt of a saddle, but too experienced to complain. Tormund lumbered along on a shaggy brown gelding that seemed as unimpressed by its rider as he was by it. They made camp where they could, in hollowed copses under overhanging rock, in the lee of abandoned crofts whose thatch had collapsed under winter's first real blow. Fires burned low and smokeless, more for morale than warmth. The cold seeped in regardless. On the third night, as the snow thickened into a curtain that blurred the trees, Jon lay on his side under a rough canvas lean-to and listened to the wind. It moaned through the branches in a way that made him think of the wall, of ice groaning under its own weight. "You're brooding again." Davos's voice came from the other pallet, little more than a shape in the half-dark. "I always am," Jon said. "You're worse than usual," Davos persisted. "What is it this time? Dragons? Dead men? Sisters who refuse to do as they're told?" "All of it," Jon said. "And this name Bran gave me, Aegon." He almost spat it. "It doesn't feel like mine." "It doesn't have to," Davos said. "Names are for other people. You know who Jon Snow is. You know who the king in the north is. The rest is just ink on parchment and noise in halls." "Tell that to Cersei," Jon said. "Or to this dragon queen. To them, names are everything." Davos conceded. "But you're not going south to argue about whose father fucked whom on which bed. You're going to tell them the dead are walking. To show them there's a war coming that will make their thrones look like toys." Tormund snorted from the darkness. "Your south is so noisy," he said. "All this fuss over chairs. Put a good fur on a rock and it's a throne. Lie down on it, it's a bed. Why waste time worrying about what other arses sat there?" "Because men like Cersei Lannister will kill you for the rock," Davos said. "That's why." Jon listened to their bickering, thinking of the path ahead. White Harbor with its ice-choked harbor. The long sail past cold coasts and warmer ones, past men who knew nothing of White Walkers and would not care until their ships stopped coming. "Do you think she'll listen?" he asked after a while. "Daenerys. I think she's fought her way across half a world to get to Westeros," Davos said. "She's burned men who stood in her way. She's freed men she could have sold. That says she's stubborn and not entirely heartless. If you can make her see that fighting the dead is the only way she ever sits on that throne for more than 5 minutes, she may listen. If you start by telling her she's standing in your castle," he shrugged in the gloom, "I'd leave that until your second drink." Jon thought of Sam's letter, of the mention of caverns full of dragonglass. "If she'll give us the glass and some men, she can call Dragonstone what she wants," he said. "She can melt the iron thrown down and forge horseshoes from it for all I care." "That would be a sight," Davos said. "Might even make all this worth it." Snow hissed against the canvas. Ghost shifted closer to Jon, warmth seeping from massive muscles. Jon curled a hand into the direwolf's fur and let the slow rhythm of his breathing steady his own. "We're really going to sail," he said softly. "To stand under dragons." "You've stood against worse," Davos replied. "Dragons are just another sort of storm. Keep your feet, keep your wits, and don't look down." White Harbor stepped up from the sea in tiers of stone and snow. From the deck of Wyman Manderly's ship, Jon watched as the city's white walls and blue-green banners resolved out of the gray morning, masts bristling like a forest of black spears in the harbor below. Ice rimed the quays, thick in the shallows. Men with axes hacked out channels for ships stubborn enough to try for open water. The smell of salt and fish was so strong it cut through even the cold. "It's worse than when I sailed in with Stannis," Davos said, squinting toward the docks. "Winter's got its claws in deep. We leave too late, we'll be icebound until spring." "We can't wait that long," Jon said. Wyman Manderly stood on the quay when they came ashore, wrapped in furs and fine velvet, his many chins flushed with cold and wine. He looked much as Jon remembered from boyhood visits. Vast, jovial, and dangerous under the softness. "Your Grace." He boomed as Jon stepped off the gangplank. "King in the north, and still only half the size of me. Tragic." Jon bowed his head. "Lord Manderly," he said, "thank you for the ship." "Thank me when it brings you back," Manderly said. His sharp little eyes flicked over Jon's shoulder to Ghost, to Davos, to the wildling hulking behind them. "You bring free folk into my harbor now? My poor fishermen will shit themselves." "They fought with us against the Boltons," Jon said. "They've fought the dead longer than any of us. If the North is to stand, we stand together." Manderly grunted. "You sound more stark than dragon," he said. "Good. The South will give your new name enough weight without us fretting over it as well. He gestured up the slope. Come. Warm your bones and talk politics. Then we'll see about dropping you into the narrow sea. New Castle, Manderly's seat, was warm and rich, its halls hung with tapestries of ships and mermen. Servants took their cloaks and thrust hot spiced wine into their hands. Jon sipped carefully. The heat and sweetness went to his head faster than he liked. In a long chamber whose inlaid table depicted the harbor in mother of pearl, Manderly spread out his own maps. He stabbed a sausage-thick finger at Dragonstone. You mean to go here, he said, to knock on the door of a woman who commands dragons and ask politely for her mighty magic rocks. Yes, Jon said. And to tell her that if she wants to rule a living realm, she needs to help us fight the dead one. She might decide a dead realm is easier, Manderly said. Corpses don't talk back. At Jon's look, he snorted. Yes. Mostly. She has a reputation for freeing slaves and burning masters. That suggests a sense of justice, twisted though it may be. Davos leaned over the map. If we sail with the next good tide, with luck we'll be past the fingers before another storm hits, he said. After that, it's a matter of hugging the coast and praying the wind doesn't turn traitor. Your ships are sound. They had better be, Manderly said. His gaze settled on Jon. Your brother wrote to me about what Bran saw, about who you are. Jon tensed. I don't care whose spear made you, Manderly said. I care that you bled for the North, but the South will care. He tapped Jon's chest with a thick knuckle. You are a symbol now. Stark boy, dragon prince. Men will see what they want in you. Some will see hope. Some will see a threat. You can't control that. You can only decide what you'll be. I'm trying, Jon said. Every choice seems wrong in one direction or another. Then choose the wrong that leaves the most of our grandchildren alive, Manderly said. That's all any of us can do. He poured more wine. While you sail, my ravens will fly, he said. To the Riverlands, the Vale, the Reach. I'll tell them what Bran Stark saw and what I've seen. That the North has a king who wants to fight death itself. Let Cersei and this dragon queen gnash their teeth over that. Let the lesser lords wonder whose banner to paint. Jon hesitated. I don't want to start a war for the Iron Throne, he said. War's already started, Manderly replied. You're just choosing where to stand in it. Better the world know there's a man in the North who might unite them than leave them thinking their only choices are a mad lioness and a dragon they've never seen. Jon thought of Daenerys' letter, now folded in Davos's pouch. An invitation to Dragonstone, written in a measured, alien hand. Send your ravens, he said at last. Tell them the truth. If they want to hide behind their walls while we fight the dark, let them. If they want to help, I won't turn them away. Manderly smiled, slow and satisfied. Good, he said. Now eat, drink, sleep while you can. Tomorrow you leave the land behind. After that, gods help you. Jon's chamber in Newcastle was small but solid, its thick walls muting the howl of the sea. A single narrow window looked out over the harbor, where lanterns swung on moored ships like low stars. Ghost lay by the hearth, head on his paws, eyes slitted. Every so often his ears twitched toward sounds Jon couldn't hear. Jon sat on the edge of the bed, tugging at the knots in his bootlaces, mind still crowded. A soft knock sounded. Come, he said. Davos slipped in, closing the door behind him. The wind had reddened his cheeks. His beard was still damp with blown spray. Ship's as ready as she'll be, he said. Manderly's men are loading the last casks now. I yelled at them until they looked ready to throw me in with the barrels. Thank you, Jon said. Davos's gaze flicked to Ghost. I still don't like the idea of taking him on the ship, he said. He's half the size of the boat. If he panics. He won't, Jon said. He's been on ships before. He glanced at the direwolf. Haven't you? Ghost didn't deign to respond. Davos came to stand by the window, looking out at the black water. You ever been this far from land? He asked. "Once, when Robb and I were boys," Jon said, "Father brought us to White Harbor to see Lord Manderly. We rowed in a small boat out to one of his ships. I remember thinking the sea went on forever." He huffed a breath. "Now it feels smaller than what's beyond the wall." Davos grunted assent. "Sea's honest in its way," he said. "It will drown you as soon as look at you, but it doesn't lie. Men are worse. Dragons, I'm not sure about. I haven't met one sober yet." Jon managed a thin smile. It faded when a soft thump sounded at the window. A raven clung to the sill, feathers ruffled by the wind, eyes bright. Davos opened the latch and let it hop inside. It shook itself, scattering droplets, then fixed Jon with its black gaze as if it knew exactly whom it had come to find. The message tube on its leg was small and plain. Jon slid the scrap of parchment free and unfolded it. The writing was neat, a careful hand that tugged at some distant memory. The words were few. "To Jon Snow, King in the North," he read aloud. "We have not forgotten the twins. We have not forgotten Robb Stark. There are still Tully men in the Riverlands and Blackfish's friends besides. If you come south, seek the trout where it swims against the current." No signature. Just a hastily sketched trout, the ink blotched where the quill had pressed too hard. "House Tully," Davos said. "Or what's left of it." Jon folded the note again. "They're watching," he said. "Even here. Even now." "Good," Davos said. "Better they watch you than each other. Gives you something to work with if this dragon queen turns you away empty-handed." Jon thought of all the threads stretching out from him now. Ravens from Manderly, whispers in the Riverlands, Bran's visions, Sam's letters. Each tugged him in a different direction. "Feels like I'm being pulled apart," he admitted. "Welcome to being a king," Davos said. "Stannis used to say every decision he made left someone furious. I told him that meant he was probably doing something right." Jon lay back on the bed, staring up at the rough-hewn beams. "I was happier when my choices were simpler," he said. "Charge or hold. Open the gate or keep it shut." "You were also dead," Davos reminded him. "I'll take complex and breathing if it's all the same." Ghost patted over and butted Jon's hand with his head. Jon scratched behind his ear, feeling the strength in the thick neck, the warmth under the fur. "Tomorrow," he told Ghost, "we sail." The direwolf's red eyes glinted in the firelight. Whatever lay ahead, dragons, queens, dead men. Jon took comfort in the steady weight of that gaze. Some things, at least, were certain. The narrow sea did its best to shake them apart. Swells rolled under the hull until every creak of timber sounded like a complaint. Spray froze along the rails at night, leaving slippery crusts that men chipped away from bleary eyes. Jon spent as much time on deck as he could, one hand wrapped around a line or the rail, lungs full of salt air. The constant motion unsettled him, but being confined below unsettled him more. On the open deck, he could at least see trouble coming, even if it came in the shape of a wave taller than the mast. "You get your legs yet?" Davos called over the wind one gray morning. "I don't think they like the idea," Jon said. His knees still felt a fraction behind the rest of him with every pitch. "You'll learn," Davos said, "or you'll empty your guts often enough you stop having anything left to lose. That's a lesson too." Tormund at least seemed to revel in it. He stood near the prow, cloak snapping, laughing every time the ship hit a trough so deep it made the world vanish. "Your sea is a fine angry bitch," he shouted. "I like her. Don't let her hear you," Davos muttered. "She'll drown you out of spite." Days blurred into each other. Gray sky, gray water, the occasional dark smudge of land far off when they hugged the coast. Once they saw another ship, a trader slipping south, its sails full and proud. The two vessels passed each other at a cautious distance, each crew eyeing the other in wary silence. It was just past midday when Ghost stiffened. The dire wolf had found his own uneasy truce with the ship, stalking along the deck with claws clicking, fur whipped by the wind. Now his hackles rose, a low growl rumbling in his chest as he stared up at the sky. Jon followed his gaze. At first he saw nothing but clouds and gulls. Then, against the thick gray, he saw a darker shape, too big and purposeful to be any bird. It banked, wings unfurling. A second shadow joined it, then a third. Dragons. Even from a distance he could feel something in the air change. The wind seemed to hold its breath. The crew froze where they stood, some crossing themselves, others simply staring, mouths slack. The creatures were little more than silhouettes at this range, gliding high above, but their outlines were unmistakable. Long necks, vast wings, tails trailing like banners. Sunlight broke through the clouds just long enough to gild the membrane of one wing, turning it for a heartbeat into a sheet of copper fire. "7 hells," Davos whispered. "They're real." Tormund let out a delighted bark of laughter. "Look at the size of them," he said. "I'd like to see one come down on a giant. That'd be a fight worth watching." "They'd both die," Davos said faintly. Jon's heart hammered a strange rhythm. Part fear, part awe, part something like recognition. These were not the dead things he'd been dreaming of. They were life in one of its oldest, most terrible forms. Weapons, yes. Symbols, certainly. But also animals with their own wild wills. "Do you think she sees us?" he asked. "If she's on one of them, probably not," Davos said. "We're a splinter on the sea, but her men at Dragonstone will have eyes. They'll know we're coming." The dragons wheeled once, twice, then vanished into a bank of cloud, leaving only the memory of their passing. Men on deck began to breathe again, looking at each other as if to confirm they hadn't gone mad. "Well," Davos said, "at least we know we're not chasing shadows." "We never were," Jon said. "The shadows are further north." Dragonstone did not so much sit in the sea as grow from it. Black rock rose sheer from the water, carved by waves and time into jagged ridges. The castle that crowned it seemed less built than coaxed out of the stone by some ancient, patient hand. Towers shaped like claws, walls bristling with carved dragon heads whose stone jaws gaped at the sky. As Jon's ship crept around the last jag of rock into a sheltered cove, the smell of sulfur thickened. Steam curled from cracks in the cliff face where the island's volcanic heart still vented its breath. The air was warmer than it had any right to be, given the chill of the sea. "We'll make for the smaller landing," Davos said, pointing toward a narrow stone quay tucked into the lee of the cliff. "If we sail straight into the main harbor, they'll have every arrow, spear and dragon pointed at us before you can open your mouth." "Comforting," Jon said. Men moved on the ledge above the narrow stair. Their armor was plain but well kept, cloaks snapping in the wind. No lion banners flew, nor stag, nor flayed man. Instead, a single black and red flag hung from an iron pole, snapping, 3-headed dragon, jaws open. "They beat us to it," Davos said. "She's here." The ship bumped gently against the stone. Sailors leapt to tie off lines. Ghost was off the deck almost before the gangplank fell, claws scraping on wet rock. He shook himself, then stood head high, as if daring the island to try him. Jon followed, boots sliding slightly on the slick surface. The stone under his feet felt different to northern rock. Warmer, somehow smoother, as if it remembered fire. "Who comes?" A voice called from above. A man stepped to the edge of the ledge, hand on the pommel of a sword. His accent was Stormland's rough. "State your name and purpose." "Davos Seaworth," Davos answered before Jon could. Formerly hand to King Stannis Baratheon. Now in the service of Jon Snow, King in the North. He gestured to Jon. "This is he." The man's gaze ran over Jon. The black leathers, the heavy furs, the sword at his hip, the pale direwolf at his side. "We've heard of you," he said. "Bastard at the wall. King in the North. Dead man walking." "Most of that is true," Jon said. "I've come because your queen asked me to, and because I need what lies under this rock." Murmurs stirred among the guards. "Our queen," the spokesman said carefully. "You mean Daenerys Stormborn of House Targaryen, rightful heir to the Iron Throne." Jon tasted the way the title sat in the air. "If she is Rhaegar's sister, then she is my aunt," he said. "By Bran Stark's visions and other proofs, I am his son. Jon Snow was the name they gave me in Winterfell. Aegon Targaryen was the one my mother whispered with her last breath. That caused a real stir. One man spat in the water. Another made a warding sign. Those are treasonous words in some parts of the world," the spokesman said. "I didn't come here to talk treason," Jon said. "I came to talk about the dead." Above, a roar split the air. Not thunder, not wind. Deeper than both. A shadow swept over the cove. Jon looked up into the underside of vast wings, into the black curve of a scaled belly. For a heartbeat, the world was dragon. Claws as long as spears, teeth like swords, eyes bright as molten gold. Ghosts snarled, hackles up, but did not flee. Men ducked instinctively. The dragon banked, tail lashing, then climbed, vanishing into low cloud as quickly as it had appeared. "Drogon," someone breathed. The spokesman swallowed. When he spoke again, his voice was rougher. "The Queen will want to hear this from your own mouth," he said. "Leave your weapons with us and you can climb the stairs." Jon's hand went to Longclaw's hilt. For a moment he resisted, the thought of going unarmed into a dragon's den sitting wrong in every taught lesson he'd ever had. "We didn't come here to fight," Davos murmured. Reluctantly, Jon unbuckled his sword belt and handed the weapon over. Longclaw looked wrong in another man's hands, the pale direwolf pommel glinting accusingly. Ghost rumbled low in his chest, but stayed at Jon's heel. "Tell your queen," Jon Snow said, looking up the long stair that climbed between carved dragon jaws toward the fortress above, "that the king in the north has come to speak of war. Not hers, not mine, the one that's coming for all of us." The wind threw his words back in his face, carrying them upward along the stone. Somewhere above, beyond those black walls, Daenerys Targaryen waited with her own crown and her own visions of the future. Between them lay dragons, secrets, and the thin hope that the living might set aside their thrones long enough to survive the dead.